Oops. So for those who are just joining us, we are on the quiz from yesterday. And we're going to look at questions 8 and question 10 at a minimum. But if there are any other ones you guys want to talk about, I'm happy to talk about any of them. We're going to do test review tomorrow, and then test will be over the weekend. It'll be due on Monday. So all of these questions are fair game for the quiz or for the test. Question 8 is where I want to start. Voila. So sometimes I like to highlight my angles. That helps me a little bit. So I've got this obtuse angle with 2x plus 13. And then these two angles together, I can add those up. So 47 and 72 is 119. Is that correct? Somebody help me with that math. 72 and 47, 119? Yeah. Okay. So what's the relationship between this obtuse angle and this obtuse angle now that I've added them together and gotten 119? Are they equal or are they equal to 180? They're equal because they're corresponding. This obtuse angle, this orange angle, I can slide over and it will land right on this one. So my equation is going to be 2x plus 13 equals 119. Okay, those two angles are congruent because they're corresponding. And then once you solve that, you're going to subtract 13 from both sides, right? And 2x equals 106. So x equals 53. The trick here is knowing that you can add those two angles together. So this sum right here is the tricky part. Adding these two things together to get the 119 and then setting this one angle equal to these two. Any questions about that? Kind of makes sense? Okay. Let's look at question 10. Oh, these are going to be our nemesis for a little while, I think. They take a little while. So best thing we can do here is always make sure you know what's being asked. We're looking for which lines have A and B parallel, right? What can I eliminate? What garbage can I get rid of because it doesn't follow our first rule? That they have to be connected by a transversal and they have to be in two separate intersections. Welcome. Which answer choices can I eliminate? Because they're not connected by a transversal. Somebody said B. So this 120 and this 60, they're not connected by a transversal. I would have to go kind of around a corner in order to get from one to the other. So 100% not going to be B. What else can I eliminate? A. This 120 and this 120 are not connected on a transversal, right? Or like line of sight. You've got to be able to get from one angle to the next angle. Okay. Sorry, Miss Ringer is usually off. I don't know why it's not off today. So now between these other two choices, I want to prove A and B parallel. So if you come over here and you highlight A and you highlight B and you highlight A and you highlight B, I'm highlighting the lines that I want to be parallel. Which pair has an angle on each line? See. I've got an obtuse angle here and an acute angle here. Obtuse plus acute, same side, supplementary, they add up to 180 degrees. There's no angle over here on B, so these prove C and D parallel. C is parallel to D. Okay? Does that make sense? I know we kind of rushed through that yesterday, and it takes a minute. Any other questions we want to talk about on this quiz? What other questions people have? 6? Yeah, absolutely. Don't be shy. All right. So again, I'm going to highlight these angles. I have an acute angle on the upper right side and an obtuse angle on the lower right side. So are they same side or are they alternate if this is my transversal? They are same side. And what do I do with same side angles? Same side congruent or same side supplementary? Supplementary. Say it with confidence. Same side supplementary, right? So we're going to set these equal to 180. 7x plus 12 plus 2x plus 78 equals 180. So I combine my like terms. They're both on the same side of that equal sign, so I get 9x. And then 78 plus 12. 78 plus 12 is 90. Equals 180. Subtract 90, divide by 9, and x equals what? Okay. Questions on that? That was a good one to talk about. Definitely questions like that on our test. Any other ones we want to talk about? Dun, dun, dun. Last call. All right. I'm trying to open the chat, see if there's anything in the chat. Nobody wants to talk about anything in the chat. All right. So let's close out that quiz. If you have not had a chance to do it, it will remain open until midnight tonight. I do want to go over the homework. I thought we went over the homework in this class, right? Yesterday? Did we do the homework like at the very end of class? Okay. There was one question I wanted to talk about, question 7. Unless somebody else, missed it. Don't know why they got something wrong. But these scores looked pretty good. It was just question 7 I wanted to talk about. Question 4, and I think question 7 was the part plus the part equals the total. And I thought we set up the equation, but we didn't solve it completely. All right, so the part plus the part equals the total, right? 14 plus 3x minus 4 equals 4x plus 4. So I've got a 3x and a 4x. I can subtract 3x from both sides and get an x. I can combine my 14 and my minus 4 and get 10 and subtract 4 from both sides. So what does x equal? What does x equal?
6.
6. With such confidence, I love it. What's the second question asking me? What do I have to do for this? What's BC? What's BC? How do I find BC? Yeah, so 3 times 6 minus 4 is 14. Again, with the confidence, I love it. So make sure you're substituting whatever x value you get into whatever expression you need. Okay? Questions, comments, concerns, worries? There we go. If I want the opposite reciprocal, I want a perpendicular slope, how do I need to change 3/4? I'm going to make it the opposite sign and the reciprocal upside down. So if this is a positive 3/4, I need a negative 4/3. Okay, negative 4/3. So type that into that box. And I'm trying to bring my chat up because I saw that somebody was doing it. So it's always one of each. So the question in the chat was, is it negative or positive? If you're given a positive, the negative reciprocal will be negative. So here, if I've got 2, there's an invisible 1 as a fraction, right? So if it's a whole number, you need to put in that whole number, that 1 underneath it. If I flip that over, now I've got 1/2. So the whole number 2 turns into 1/2 because this is a positive. I need to turn it negative. Again, these are perpendicular slopes. I'm doing the opposite reciprocal. Changing the sign. If it starts positive, it ends up negative, and then flip the fraction upside down. And if it's a whole number, we got to put a little invisible 1 under there. What happens to number 3? 8. It does turn positive, absolutely, and it flips upside down to be 8/7. What about positive 1? Negative 1. Okay, positive 1 slope is going to go up and to the right. Negative 1 slope is going to go down and to the right. What about 0? Does it? So if we've got a horizontal line, those were 0 slope, right? And then we've got a vertical line, and that's where the 0 went under, right? So I am going to flip it, but if I have a 0 in the denominator, is that allowed in math? Never. Can never, ever, ever have a 0 in the denominator in math. So this is where you're going to get undefined. Okay? That's where it's going to be undefined. So let's go look and see what this looks like in practice, because that's a whole lot of information, but it's kind of meaningless because we haven't really practiced. So if your last name is the beginning part of the alphabet, I want you to find the slope between these 2 points. If your last name is the ending part of the alphabet, I want you to find the slope between these 2 points. Remember, we're going to do rise over run. So y minus y over x minus x. If you need to grab a piece of paper, grab a piece of paper, right? We can't all do these in our head. In fact, I don't recommend it because I make crazy mistakes when I do them in my head. Andre? Yeah, absolutely. Do you want to use just a dry erase marker or you want a real marker? Yeah, grab one from right there, and then I even have a whiteboard for you. And then just leave them on your desk when you're done. Okay, so beginning part of the alphabet is going to use y minus y over x minus x for the first one, and end of the alphabet is going to do the second one. And when you get an answer, either put it in the chat or just shout it out. Somebody says parallel. Can we get confirmation on parallel? What's the slope between A and B? 3/4. So 6 minus 3, y minus y, 6 minus 3. And then 2 minus negative 2. Be careful about that. When you subtract a negative, you're really adding. So definitely that AB, the line between A and B, is going to be 3/4 slope. What about between D, C, and D? What do we get there? Also 3/4. Because the slopes are the same, they are parallel. Okay, let's do the same thing. So beginning part of the alphabet is going to do orange, end part of the alphabet is going to do blue. Andre, usually I have rags. That way you can save your sweatshirt. Does the other side have a graph? Sorry, that was my daughter, and she knows not to call me this time of day. So did we get any slopes? What's A and B? If I do y minus y over x minus x. 2 over 5. And what about the other one? 8 minus 3. So I always put my big number first. And then 1 minus 3. So are those parallel, perpendicular, or neither? Perpendicular. Why are they perpendicular?
It's the opposite of x.
So it is a negative reciprocal, and I've got the negatives, right? So positive 2, negative 2, positive 5, negative 5. Nice. All right. We got 3 more to do. Same thing. If you're a beginning letter of the alphabet, do the ABs. You know that if you actually got this problem on a test, you'd have to do all of them, right? Or both of them. So if you're beginning part of the alphabet, do the orange ones. If you're end of the alphabet, do the blue ones. And then just shout out what you got. Number 3, AB. Number 4, CD. Whatever you get. But everybody should be calculating something. And it's okay to do it in your head. But then put it in your notebook when you get the answer. Some people like to put the X and the Y and the X and the Y. AB 3 over 4. Is that a new one? And AB is 2. Which one, Cadence? So 2 minus negative 12 is 14, and negative 2 minus negative 9 is 7. So this one is definitely 2. What do we get for C and D? 2 as well? So are those parallel, perpendicular, or neither? Parallel. Exact same slope, going to be parallel. Okay, we're finding this from 2 points. So what about number 4? Anybody got number 4? And don't feel like you need to get every single one of these. I know I'm going fast. You just need to make sure you know how to find slope between 2 points. So if I've got X and Y and X and Y. Y minus Y over X minus X. It doesn't. So in this one, I would start with the 8. I would do 8 minus 6. And because the 8 and the negative 1 are together, they have to be vertical from each other. So then I would do that one. But over here, I would start with the 3 because it's bigger. So 3 minus 2 divided by 3 minus negative 1. So I'm getting a couple of neithers in the chat because 8 minus 6 is 2, and negative 1 minus 2 is negative 3, and then 3 minus 2 is 1, and 3 plus 1, or 3 minus negative 1 is 4. This one 100% is neither. Do we see the difference between parallel, perpendicular, and neither? So parallel's got to be the same slope. Perpendicular's got to be the same numbers upside down with 1 negative and 1 positive. And then neither is literally everything else. Okay? Literally everything else. So let's take a minute and do number 5. Make sure everybody's on the same page. those are our notes for today. So now it's time for a little bit of practice. And honestly, there's a little bit more notes in this too. So if you go back to our Schoology page, you might want to keep that digital notebook open because there are some similarities here. If you like to hold on to your Google Slides, there's a link to this presentation in Google Slides, but there's also Pear Deck. So if you prefer to be able to write on it, I would probably click on the Pear Deck. I'm going to click on, actually, I'm going to do the Pear Deck. So it doesn't matter to me which one you click on. You just need to have access and be able to take some notes on it. Hopefully the links work. Dun, dun, dun. And it's going to pick up where I left off last time. So we're already going to have some notes in here, which will be good. We're going to skip over some of these slides because some of them repeat. So this slide is literally what we just had, right? Parallel lines have the exact same slope. So if you want to write same or equal right here, you're welcome to. Perpendicular lines have the negative reciprocal slope. And these are all of the examples we just did for finding the negative reciprocal. Remember, you're going to change the sign and then flip the fraction upside down. Okay? And then we literally just did these 5 problems too. Do we need to practice any more of these, or do we feel like we've got these pretty much down? Okay. So when you're given 2 sets of points, your line segment AB, find the slope, line segment CD, find the slope, and then compare them. You only have 3 options. They're either going to be exactly identical, exactly the opposite, or they're going to be neither. There's a whole bunch of practice on this. We don't really need any of this. What I want to get to is this slide, I think. So I'm going to erase all of this so that we can talk about it. We talked about this really briefly the other day when we did slope. I think it was Tuesday. Where do we find the slope in an equation, right? So we're going to have to do some equations. We're going to cheat a little bit and do some Desmos stuff in a minute, but I do think that we need to be able to know for sure how to find the slope from graphs and then how to write the equation. So if you start at your leftmost point and you go up, 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 and then over, wow, my line is crazy fat. Let's see if we can fix that. Yeah, that's better. All right, so what is the slope of this line? If I go up 4 and right 2. 4 over 2. Does that reduce to something? 4 over 2. So my slope is going to be 2. I can write that y equals. So I went up. That's a really good question because you always want to ask yourself that. If you go up, that's positive, and I went right, that's also positive. So it is going to be a positive slope. I'm going up and to the right. This is the uphill climb, right? Then I need to know what the y-intercept is. So if I look at this y-axis, what's that point right there? Oh, that's not a very good color. Need a contrasting color. 1, 2, 3, I think. Minus 3, right? So that's kind of the anatomy of the equation. The slope is going to be right here in front of the x, and then the y-intercept is going to be this second part over here. So what about this equation? Let's see if that helps my line. Here I'm also going to go from left to right. This time I'm going to go down 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So what's that slope? Why is this one negative? It's a negative slope and I went down. So you can either look at that negative line. This is definitely a negative slope. It's going down and to the right. This one went up and to the right. So my slope is negative 4 over 5. If I'm going to write that equation, it's going to be y equals negative 4/5 x minus 2, absolutely. So we don't need both the minus and the negative. Just one of them will do, minus 2. Okay, kind of makes sense? But this is where we look for the slope. This is where we look for the slope. So are these lines parallel, perpendicular, or neither? Neither. No relationship here. I've got a 2 and an invisible 1, and then a 4 and a 5. Do we need to do more practice on this, or do we feel like we've got this?
So you only simplify if you can.
Only simplify if you can. Absolutely. Do you want to do some more practice, or you want to go for it? Let's see what the next slide looks like. Here is where we need some Desmos help. So we can find the slope here by manipulating some variables, right? But in geometry, we try to do it graphically. So take a second, Google Desmos graphing calculator, or go to ClassLink and open up your Desmos graphing calculator. You're going to need this today. So open up a new tab, search Desmos graphing calculator. You want to get the one that looks like this. We're going to see if we can type the equations into Desmos and have them give us some information. Okay? So we're going to type in this first equation first. X plus y equals 6. Ooh. And my Desmo is super big numbers. I do not want that big of numbers. You want to look for good points. So if you click on 0, 6, that should be a good point on the line, right? And then you can click down here at 6, 0. What's the slope of this line? Is it 6? If I do y minus y and x minus x, I have 6 minus 0, and then 0 minus 6. So 6 minus 0, and then 0 minus, oops, that's a 0, minus 6. So that's a -1. This is a negative slope, and it's going down 6, right 6, or down 2, right 2. So this slope is going to be -1, and it's a little bit easier to see that in the picture than it is just from the equations, especially the way they're written. So let's choose 2 more to practice. Which other 2 do you want to do? Number 2, 8? Okay. So let's back this out, and we'll just type it. Yeah. So 5x plus 2y equals -2. Yeah, I won't show you any Desmo that you won't have on the SOL. So here we need to find some good points, and sometimes that's the hardest thing. So I see a good point here at -2, 4. You can always type that in, -2, 4. And then label it, make sure it's a good point. Anybody see another good point? Not that one. 0, -1. And that's the hardest part with this kind of process, is to find those good points. So do you guys know what I mean by a good point? It's where an X line, a Y line, and the function line all meet. So I've got the Y axis meeting at Y equals 1, or Y equals -1, and that red line goes through it. So it's like a 3-way intersection. So now we're going to find the slope here. So 4 minus -1 is going to be 5. 4 minus -1, and then -2 minus 0 is -2. Right? So this is, again, a negative slope. It's a -5/2, or 5/2. The negative sign can kind of float around. Yes? Okay, let's try one more. What equation do we want to do? 12? Okay. x minus 4y equals 0. So what do I need to do with that? We got a good point. It's conveniently located right there at 0, 0. Another good point. -1 and -4, -1. Yeah, so I just like pinch the mouse and expand the mouse in order to like zoom it in, zoom it out. You can zoom it like crazy far out, or you can zoom it crazy close up. And then if you put like one finger on it, you can drag it. So Desmos is pretty smart, not super smart, but pretty smart. So we said -4, -1, right? So what's my slope here? Is it going to be positive or negative? Positive. So if we do y minus y, 0 minus -1 is 1. And then 0 minus -4 is 4. Yeah? So can we find slope from equations using the graphs? Hello. How are you? Good. It's all good. I love it when students come back to visit. So please feel free to come back and visit anytime. All right, so let's go through that. This is one of our last things we need to just make sure we know. Hoy lines and Vux lines, okay? And I know today is such a crazy note-taking day, right? Vux lines are vertical lines. They have an undefined slope because that 0 goes underneath or in the denominator. And then we can write an x equals equation. This intercept is at x equals -1. That's why we've got this equation x equals -1. Okay, that intercept is what tells us. Is that a little bit familiar? Kind of. And then we've got Hoy lines. They're horizontal lines. The 0 sits on top of the fraction, right? Instead of being underneath the fraction. Here we've got a y-intercept, so y equals +3. It's the intercepts that we use to name those lines. And that's like the hardest part because you think vertical lines are going to be y equals because it's a y-axis is a vertical line. Okay, so just point, kind of make a mental note of that, flag this, do whatever you need to do to remember that that's going to be important. When our equations are in y equals mx plus b form, that form that we practiced, you can just look at them. They're really easy, right? If I have a 5 coefficient and a 5 coefficient, these are going to be parallel. Questions on that? If I've got a -3 halves and a +2/3, they're going to be perpendicular. Super easy if they're written in y equals mx plus b because that m is the slope. The ones that we were just doing weren't written in that way. They won't always be in that way. So sometimes you got to put them into Desmos to figure out what the slope is. The whole reason to put them into Desmos is to get the slope. The slope's the most important thing. Okay. Here, this is an example of why we would put it into Desmos. So if we go back to our Desmo, and I know I'm like talking and talking and talking. I'm sorry, guys. Put these into our Desmo. We get equals 2. And then we're going to put our next one in. 6x minus 3y equals 21. And then we can slide this over and see that those are perpendicular. These meet at exactly a right angle. If it helps to zoom out a little bit, you can zoom out. That's why I was out at like 300, 400, right? If it helps to zoom out, you can see that these are exactly 90 degrees, okay? Be careful about assuming, because sometimes they'll look 90 degrees and they won't actually be 90 degrees. Okay. We are almost done and ready to practice. Almost. So the practice that it's going to look like today is going to look like this. Okay. You're going to be given two questions or two equations. I want you to put them into Desmos and visually see, are they parallel, perpendicular, or neither? So I'm on slide 18. We're not going to do these here in Pear Deck. We're going to actually do them in a green puzzle piece, but this is what they're going to look like. So if we type in our first equations, the first one actually is super easy. Do we need to type this one in? What do we think? Where's the slope? They're the same. So are these parallel, perpendicular, or neither? They're parallel. Here too, we've got the slope because it's in y equals mx plus b form. Are those going to be parallel, perpendicular, or neither? You're not sure because it's a negative, right? So one of them is positive and one of them is negative. So we've got the opposite part. Do we have the reciprocal part? We don't, because they're both 2/5. This one's going to be neither. Okay. These are going to be the first 6 problems on your classwork in a minute. What about this? If I've got the negative 1/4 and the 4, are those parallel, perpendicular, or neither? Perpendicular, why? Because they're opposite of each other. I've got one positive, one negative, one 1/4, and one 4/. There's an invisible 1 right there. This one is where you're going to have to put it in Desmos. Okay, so put that into Desmos and see what you get. This one too, you're going to have to put into Desmos. Notice that this one is this is y equals mx plus b, but this one is not. So you're going to have to put these into Desmos. Okay, so some of them will be obvious and some of them you're going to have to look at. What I want you to do now, there are 3 green puzzle pieces. You do not have to do all 3 of them. I want you to choose 2 of the 3 green puzzle pieces to do today. And I'm going to give you the next 35 minutes or 30 minutes to do them. So parallel, perpendicular, neither has, I think, 18 questions. Test review has 13 questions and the quiz has 9. You need to do any 2 of the 3. If you do all 3, then you'll get extra credit. Okay? As you have questions, ask a friend, ask me, put it in the chat, do what you need to do so that you can get those answers right and get as much work as you can get done in the next 30 minutes.